going to say a prayer today. Heavenly Father, protect us through all that should trouble us.
That is me. Why is this here? What is this doing up here?
Pour out a blessing among us, O Lord. Keep us near your heart.
Something is happening here, and I need your help.
When something like this happens to you, like, you don't trust reality anymore. I just remember waking up tied to that chair.
Okay, hi guys, how are you doing? Nice to speak to you.
Hey man, how's it going?
John, I think you're on, there you go, so I was on mute, there you go, there you go. So, thanks very much for speaking to me. John, first of all, please refrain from putting your hand anywhere near the screen during this interview, please.
You want to pray with me? You know?
So listen, thanks very much for speaking to me, and thank you very much for scaring the heck out of me. It was really enjoyed it. It's great. I mean, my first question is for all three of you. I don't know about you, but I've got a really kind of love-hate relationship with these kind of faux documentary found footage. They either really don't work or they really work, and this one really works. But I'm quite curious. I mean, obviously, the typical question is what kind of intrigued you to take this on, but what was it specifically about this found footage faux documentary that kind of stood out for you and made you really think that this one could actually kind of work with this kind of faux footage style? I don't know. Let's go with John, because he opens the whole film. So what would you say?
You know, I don't think I had a full picture of it until I saw the final version. I knew that they were shooting with a lot of different cameras based on the location. Like, what would they use in this location? Well, they might have this type of security camera, and because it's Larkin, Texas, and it's not Dallas, Texas, or Houston, Texas, maybe that security camera was made 10 years ago. Maybe it's an older security camera. There was a lot of stuff where it was like, I don't think I had a clear picture of the vision until I saw the final product and was like, oh, okay, I see what this is, in a way that I don't think I fully comprehended reading the script. You know, this script wise, I'm just sort of like, do I find this story of interest? I lived a good portion of my life in small town Texas, and I know what that's like. And I grew up in the evangelical church, and I know what that's like. So there were aspects of it that appealed to me within the found footage genre, where believability is kind of make or break, right? Like a lot of, the reason like why Blair Witch is like the gold standard is because of how believable it is. Yeah. Performance wise and environmentally and all that sort of thing. And the ones that aren't as successful are because they're too much like a movie. The cracks of it being a movie start to seep in. And I think feeling comfortable going, okay, this is storytelling in a small Texas town, with the kind of pastors that I may have grown up having as a kid. I knew that there was going to be at least that. My faith in the film was that at least there was going to be an approach towards that layer of believability that might set it over the line, of that make or break line of how real does this feel? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm guessing that it's pretty much the same for both of you. Know that you probably had an idea going in, but then once it kind of, I imagine probably when you spoke to Peter and Paul as well, you got kind of a wider picture of kind of how you would be filmed on the actual day now, because that is something that I imagine wasn't really kind of evident in the script. No.
Definitely, yeah. I think I knew, for me, the enticing things about this movie partially is I knew how much wiggle room there was going to be. I'd worked with Paul and Peter before, so I know how collaborative they are. So I knew that there would be a lot of cool opportunity to flex and ad lib and add in improv and stuff like that. But I think also for me, the thing that really hooked me was for my character it was the faux documentary piece, getting to sit in the documentary chair and talk about what happened. I mean, as a fan of horror and as an actor, I think about this all the time. How do you go through the events of a horror movie and then like go to your job on Monday? Like how do those things sit with you? How do you sleep? How do you live? And I got to figure that out for Wendy for when she's in the interview chair talking to Lynn about what happened. So, as an actor, I have to fill in the blanks. What happens in those ensuing months after Wendy has lived through these things? So the chance to talk about what happens in the horror movie after the credits roll, that for me was the juiciest and most exciting thing about getting to do this.
I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because I mean, obviously your character, like you said, she has to. It's kind of like behind the scenes. We see her in this kind of false documentary, so you have to kind of really do extra homework and really kind of get inside the character, probably more so than the rest. No disservice to the rest of the cast, but because you have to imagine her on the other side of the camera and telling this kind of the story in this documentary style. How did you approach that? Did you watch any kind of specific true crime programs or documentary, or how did you kind of get into that kind of mindset of how you would relate things in how you felt that they'd played out in your
Yeah,
mind?
great question. It was sort of like preparing two different characters. That my prep for the events of the movie, so to speak, was more so about Wendy's past and what she's been through, and then my prep for the interview stuff was more so how has she been living in the months since. Um, and yeah, I think I don't know if there's any particular true crime, but I've watched a lot. That definitely informs it. But I think also just reading a lot about psychology, psychotherapy, reading about like mental illnesses and trauma and PTSD and how that affects people. And so most of the process was just getting super specific about the choices that Wendy made after all of this happens. What changes did she make in her life? What did she protect? What did she abandon? Um, how many hours of sleep has she gotten collectively? And yeah, that was really fun and juicy.
Yeah, something I loved about the film as well is kind of the not just the ambiguity of the film itself, but the ambiguity of the narrators because they don't really know what's going on. And one of the main kind of ambiguities of the film is Brian's character, the stranger, who you kind of got to be kept quite ambiguous. So I'm quite curious how you were kept on your toes, how the directors kept you on your toes, like using the cameras specifically, especially kind of the first times that we get to see your character to kind of keep the audience as well on the toes, kind of going, "Who's this guy? How did that work?"
Right. Well, it was interesting. I'm very attracted to kind of sort of the like found footage can be a dream for an actor, I think, because it's sort of like, oh, like, the job is always to kind of like truly connect with a human being and sort of portray a human being as unadorned in as unadorned a way as possible so that it seems that they're actually really there. This was a different one because like it's like a found footage situation, but I'm like, oh, but this guy, we don't know what's up with him. Is he sort of, are there, let's say supernatural situations or aspects to him? Are there not? Who knows? So it was very shrouded in mystery. And I spoke with Paul and Peter, like there is kind of a quote unquote answer to what he is and why he's there and what's going on. But they were like, but that's not going to be in there. We're not telling
Right.
anybody. We're just talking about that. We don't want, that's not a thing. He's just meant to sort of be this kind of like, I keep calling it just like a color that sort of kind of comes in and comes out and sort of just like, we don't know what's going on. It was, so on the one hand, you've got found footage, this is sort of verisimilitude. But like on the other hand, playing this sort of not based, not so anchored in reality character, but like on, security cameras that are shot from the ceiling or shaky, whatever. Like it was an interesting challenge. And I think I just had to sort of, kind of lean into those conversations that we had and lean into kind of the things that I was doing sort of offset to kind of build my understanding of what he was and what he wanted and who he was, but also just he's utterly unconcerned with the people around him, which is an interesting situation for an actor to be in because usually you're trying to connect, but he's not interested. He just wants his thing. And I it was such a blessing to have these little pieces and so much of it. I keep mentioning it, but Ashley Landavazo, who like created the props that he worked with and we kind of worked on the costume and stuff, like a lot of that, those were nuggets that I grabbed onto and I was like, these tell stories about who he is. So it's interesting. It was an interesting thing to do. I've done other found footage where it's like, it's just bearing yourself and being so open and like uncagey, but this is the exact opposite of it. So it was an interesting thing to do.
I mean, you mentioned there that you had like even clothing that you wore and things like that were kind of anchors to
Yeah.
help you with the performance. I'm very curious with John. I mean, you open the film with a very, very strong in your face scene. I'm very curious what was kind of the anchor to for you in that scene to make sure that you kind of, because it sets the whole film, the whole tone of the film, that very first scene. So I'm very curious how you kind of approach that for your to kind of introduce your character, introduce the film, and what kind of anchor did you use there?
You're talking about me and the hand,
The
the
hand,
prayer.
yeah.
That you might
Was that the
be
first thing that you
surprised to
shot?
find that was, yeah, it was improvised.
Hmm.
There was, I didn't have all of the actual Bible verses were chosen by Peter and Paul, and all of the pulpit preaching was written in the script. I would say about 30%, 40% of the Salvation Hour stuff was improvised. And one of the things that was improvised was um, them allowing me just to do that thing that I kind of had been inspired by I don't even know if he's still operational, but in the '90s there was a televangelist named Robert Tilton who used to do that thing of like touch your hand on the screen and I'll pray
Yeah.
for you. Um, and I remembered that, and yeah, just improvising. They were like, all right, we're just going to turn the camera on and get you saying some different things. Some of the sign offs, there's some sign offs that I do that were part of that bulk. I might change my top and put a different sweater on, and then have me run through a couple of them, and then put something else on and have me run through a couple. So all of those improvisations were gathered together, sort of in one session of filming. And it was sheer luck, I guess, that improvisation resonated so strongly that it in the editing process it slowly found its way moving up to the front of the film. And then shock of shocks, now it's like front and center in the trailer, when it wasn't necessarily something that was in the screenplay. I mean, I don't take that for granted. I told the producer Dave Lawson when he showed me the trailer for the first time, I was like, okay, I said, I realize I'm in the movie, but I have to thank you. It never crossed my mind that I would be like part of the marketing. And he was like, well, no shit, you're part of the marketing. You're in the movie. I'm like, right, I know that, but like, it's a made up spot. It's a made up something on the spot that ends up being like the thread through the trailer, which is I don't take it for granted. I have a huge well of gratitude for that. But yeah, I that opening was just one of those film set things of pure luck.
Mhm. They're going to pull me out in a minute. So just there's one last question that, I mean, I don't want to give any spoilers away at all, but there are some amazing icky special effects in the film, which I imagine there was a lot of pressure on your heads, especially Brian and Nell, I imagine, because they're shooting kind of POV style with these, which I'm guessing was all on camera, the effects. If you made a mess of that, it was right back to phase one on, start everything sort of fresh. How did you approach those scenes without giving too much away? Because I don't want to give too much away about that part of the story.
We
Oh
were in
man,
great hands. I mean, we're working with this incredible SFX studio called Hogwash
absolutely.
and Meredith Johns. So I trusted Meredith really fully. We had some incredible team members on set doing the SFX. Brian, do you want to?
No, yes, I mean it's all when it comes to that stuff, it's Meredith and Skylar and Stephanie and people who were doing, and I've known Meredith for years and years, and she's incredible. And they just always, I don't know, every time I'm on set with them, they bring something incredible. And it was that at that point it was just fun because we're getting these pieces to play with and these really disgusting things to interact with. But it's I mean that's the good
Those
stuff
were
when it
also
comes to
some of the only times that we sort of cheated, so to speak,
yeah.
like for the Salvation Hour, when we needed some SFX moments. Usually for the Salvation Hour stuff, we were filming with nobody in the room
Yeah.
because,
Right.
there are security cameras that we were using, the GoPros. And so for most of that footage, all the crew members, Paul and Peter, everybody has cleared out. And it was just us actors. And it felt very theatrical and cool. But for those really important SFX moments, those were the moments where we sort of cheated and had Meredith and Skylar and everybody a little closer to us to make sure that we nailed that one shot. So I felt having so much of the movie feeling like we were flying by the seat of our pants and just trusting that other actors in the room. It gave me that extra level of security to know that, like, all right, for this take, it's just a close up, which was
right.
this process. So that felt fun.
Well, listen, they give me the route. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the film again. It's you did a great job, all of you.
Thanks, man. Thanks for watching.
I hope to speak to the hand sometime soon. I hope to speak to you all again sometime soon, guys. Have a good release.
Did you feel it? That's the blessing.